It's nice to finally meet you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Just same thing I guess everybody's dealing with in the insurance industry. Just every day up at dawn, pride swallowing siege. I'm sure you've heard rumors about this, but all of the nationwide exclusive agency force is going independent July the 1st.
Yes.
And not since Jesus walked on the earth have there been a group of agents that have gone through more in the last 3 years than we have. And then, we're right in the middle of this transition where, and I think a friend of mine out of Birmingham, he's an insurance agent in Birmingham, Alabama. He said it best a few months ago. He said, I met with my staff yesterday and I told them that the only two things that aren't changing are our phone number and our agency name. And so all, which now amounts to about 2,000, probably even a little less than that, 2,000 insurance agents with nationwide principal agents are in this process of changing all of their systems, all of their processes, all of their technologies. And we are smack dab in the middle of that right now. In fact, I just made a decision 5 minutes before I came on air here with you about a technology that we're going to implement called Rocket Referrals, which we had 3 or 4 of those different technologies that we were looking at using. Mm-hmm. And over a 2-week process, through a lot of vetting and talking and praying and fighting, and I'm very fortunate in my agency to have not just myself, but I have 2 other principal agents that could go out and run their own shop tomorrow. So nice. One of those guys is very technology savvy, and he has been instrumental in both the implementation of our technologies, our AMS systems, and all that. But he and I were on first time this has happened, but we were on separate ends of the table on which technology we were going to go with. He had one he wanted, I had one I wanted. And so we've been in this vetting process for about 2 days, Friday and today, where we were, just going over pros and cons and what was going to be the best for our agency and what would we utilize. And at the end of the day, I tell people all the time, I say, insurance is really, we make it hard sometimes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you'll just sell the shit out of insurance, everything else will take care of itself. Although
100%.
Although it does get a lot easier if you have the right technologies in place, the right processes in place. And I'm sorry that I just got on here and started rambling. I've been hitting it 100 miles an hour for the last 3 hours. So I apologize.
No, don't worry about it. Listen, it's funny because I talked to Bradley last week about the technology aspect of insurance. Right. And you wouldn't think the insurance world has so much technology, but there's so many different options. It can actually get super overwhelming. Is it worth it to get this piece? Is it worth it to get that piece? And I think, like you said, sometimes we just overthink it, right?
Right.
And you can go, that's what I was saying with Bradley. Like, you can just go down crazy wormholes.
One thing that I try to implement myself as a leader of my organization is, I want certainty, I want clarity, and I want simplicity. I've actually got that on a Post-it note right here. And as part of that, the certainty part of that, one thing I try to do is I try to very quickly gather as much information as I can, pros and cons, and then make a decision and just go. And if it doesn't work out, unless we've done something stupid and signed a 5-year contract or a 3-year contract, I don't like contracts as it relates to technology. We have been on this journey for the past month and a half to find the perfect rater for our agency, and based on what we would actually utilize, meaning what my people would actually use.
Yeah.
And what's the best thing out there and those kinds of things. And there was one rater that Justin, my business partner, the guy I was talking about earlier, he was like, man, I really think this is going to be the ticket. So we fired down on it. We brought it in, made a shortcut on our management system for it. We used it for 1 day and canceled it.
Oh man, you didn't like it that much, huh?
Well, it just from a workflow standpoint, it just wasn't gonna be. And what was funny about it was I had called Bradley the day before because he and I talk maybe once a week. We don't talk as much as probably people think we do.
Yeah.
But we talked, I guess it was the day before we fired down on it. And he was like, don't do that. Don't get that. I've already tried it. Didn't work. Canceled it a bit. So here the definition of insanity, keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So we were like, Bradley doesn't know what he's talking about. So we went ahead, fired down on it, used it for a day. Hey, we're not using this anymore. Cancel the contract. So, or cancel the Raider. So it's just a myriad. And going back to what I was talking about relative to the beginning of this phone call and this podcast was these nationwide agents, some of them have been doing the same thing for 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Yep.
So you're asking them to make wholesale changes where everything in their agency is going to change except the phone number and the name on the door. And then in the middle of all of that, where we're just bombarded with vendors and figuring out our agency management system and technology and blah, all while still making the donuts, right? Somebody's still got to make the donuts. Somebody's got to, answer the phone here and, take care of clients and bills. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of all that, a pandemic hits. That's really, in our lifetime, we've never seen anything like that before. So that threw a curveball into everything. And,
the timing couldn't be any worse.
Not worse. And so, man, it's just been a struggle, and it's very hard. I say this sometimes, and I don't know where I heard this from. Probably I'm a self-help guy. Since I was probably in my early 20s, I can remember I was Tom Cruise in the movie Cocktail, where he's always got a self-help book behind the bar. You remember that? Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
My wife loves that movie, by the way. But I was reading somewhere not long ago. It said, happiness is where you find it, not where you look for it. And, for nationwide agents right now, I'm not speaking for all of them. I know some of them, everybody has a different place in different chapter, different season in their life. But I would venture to say that over the past 6 months, this has been a very stressful time for them in making all of these decisions, wanting to make the right decision. I hadn't even got into talking about the fact that, July 1st, you really need to have as many good contracts with as many good carriers as you can.
Yeah, and it's not easy to get that direct appointment.
It's easier for us in some ways if you have a track record of success, you have a low loss ratio. Obviously, the more business you have, the more carriers are like, now, wait a minute, how much premium you got? If you got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million in premium, they'll listen.
Conversation's a lot easier.
Right. But still, I mean, you still got to go through all that. And if you're not going to do that, pick an aggregator or, a cluster, something like that. So it's been a very challenging time. I try to keep it all in perspective myself and think to myself, don't let yourself get overwhelmed. You're going to make mistakes. That's going to happen.
Yep.
You've got great people. You got great people behind you. I do. I have the best team I've ever had since I've been in insurance. And try to find some happiness in it. Every day when I get in my truck and I put my seatbelt on to go home, I think to myself, did I move the ball one step forward to greatness today? Did I do something, whether it was something big or something little or whatever, but did I move us, or are we going to be better tomorrow because of what I did today?
Yeah. What's your thought? Listen, I came from, I'm not sure if you know, but I was a nationwide agent for 9 years. Cool. At another agency, I was a producer.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. Thank you for yours. We'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, I just opened up a scratch agency 4 months ago. So the timing was impeccable.
Sure.
But Nationwide, the first couple of years we were fully captive, but then after that, the previous owner had a some sort of deal where we were able to be independent on the commercial side only.
Yeah. So let me stop you right there. So what happened about? I guess it was, I keep saying I'm not good with time. Like I'm one of those people that I could say something happened 5 years ago. It might have happened 10 years ago. I'm just not good with time.
I'm the same way. I get it.
But I believe it was about 5 or 6 years ago. Of course, somebody's going to come on here and say, no, it was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was sometime a pretty good while ago. Back when you're talking about Nationwide came out, and this was way before they decided to go strictly independent. And they said, and I know where this came from because I had a conversation in San Diego 2 years ago with the CEO of Nationwide, man to man, face to face. I'm talking eyeball to eyeball, kneecap to kneecap. And he alluded to me that he was kind of behind that. It was a letter of authority that was sent out to all Nationwide captive agents that said, hey, look, we know that Nationwide, like a lot of captive carriers, State Farm and some others, rates and what we do in commercials just not super competitive, not real. You don't get rich doing that. So
yeah,
they came out with what was called a letter of authority that all Nationwide agents signed that gave them the ability to go out and sell commercial through any carrier that they wanted to. Yeah. Here was the kicker, and I don't know that much thought was put into this, but for most Nationwide agents, because of being in that, you're still in the swimming pool with Nationwide, a lot of carriers were like, nah, no, we're not, we'll give you a contract, but we're going to give it to you if you can sell both personal lines and commercial.
Yep.
And then some agencies, some of the largest agencies in the country that were Nationwide, partnered with companies like the Levitt Group out of Utah, and became fully independent, 4 or 5 years ago. And so that's what your principal agent did. He signed a letter of authority.
Yeah. And I remember, when I first started working there, I started personal lines. I was 21. I knew nothing about insurance. I barely knew what a premium was. And
I was the same way.
Yeah. And it was funny because it was so simple, only quoting Nationwide auto, only quoting Nationwide home, only quoting Nationwide, commercial. And then it went to, oh my God, we have access to this company for home and this company for commercial. And it opens up a whole new world that I actually found, for me specifically, again, I was just a producer at the time, so what do I know? But I found it very much more entertaining for me specifically. So like I just enjoyed having a bunch of different markets. And if Nationwide had a crazy 50% rate increase, I could shop them if I had to and try to save the account. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's what I liked about it. But then again, I do know, like in my area specifically, there's a lot of Nationwide agents that only sell Nationwide and they have never even really experienced the independent side. And, I think a lot of them get very nervous or scared to see that world, you know what I mean? And see that side of the insurance world. What's your thought process? Are you like excited to check, just be like fully independent?
Well, let me say this. Human beings, I try to study just human beings, mindset, their thought process in general. And I think humans in general don't like change. I think people have a hard time with change, whether that's changing a habit or changing changing anything. Your hairstyle doesn't matter what it is. So, I mean, I've had some situations in the past month of this change that we're going through that has given me a lot of anxiety. Like, I have a bookkeeper that manages my operating line, that keeps up with all of our expenses, payroll, all that stuff. Well, I've always taken the Gary Vaynerchuk approach to that of like, if you're not good at something, let somebody else handle it, focus on your strengths. And so in the past month, I've had to kind of realize that I'm going to be the one that's going to have to get into this QuickBooks stuff relative to our trust accounts and our sweep accounts, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
that's given me a lot of anxiety. It's not something I'm good at. It's not something that I'm the accounting, bookkeeping side of the house is not something I'm really, it's not my strong suit. And it's given me a lot of anxiety. So, and I think for some people, making decisions that in some cases are pretty big financial decisions. I mean, you start talking about going and purchasing an agency management system that you're going to, never had to do before. And that, thousands, could be thousands of dollars a month. That's a big decision.
Yeah.
And then once you get it, it's like, holy cow, now we got to learn how to use it. So
the learning curve is huge.
It goes back to what I said when I started this podcast. I mean, I just think there's been a lot of change going on. And I think a lot of people have gotten, nationwide agents particularly, have gotten a lot of anxiety. And I'm going to say one other thing that's different from your situation, because I'm sitting over here doing the poor, pitiful me, and you just started a scratch agency. But I feel like the difference there is that in a lot of ways, it's easier to, although you're not getting the monthly income that you want, obviously, but in a lot of ways, it's easier to start a scratch agency because it goes back to what I said. We still got to make the donuts. And when you got $5, $10, $15 million in premium and you're trying to change all this, what I've done is try to insulate my staff for the most part, besides Justin, who's in the office across from me right here. Mm-hmm. But I've tried to insulate them and feed them knowledge and training as needed while they still serviced our existing book of business, because we can't just all shut down and spend 8 hours a day working on our agency management system or deciding, what technologies we're going to use. But, man, I tell you, going back to you starting a scratch agency, that's a double-edged sword there, because you don't have all of the donuts that have to keep being made every day, and the paper files that are going paperless, and the downloads of your agency, all that stuff. But at the same time, you've got a lot of things that you're dealing with on your side, including when you start a scratch agency, nobody knows who the hell you are. And, the advice I tell young agents like yourself and I know I don't know how old you are, but what I tell people is, if I was going to go start a scratch agency, don't care where it is, I would want to become the mayor of my village, and I would treat it like a politician. I'd be at every event, slinging as many business cards as I could, doing a lot on Facebook, but not, hey, I'm Scott Howell, and I just started a new insurance agency, and my family's going to starve to death if you don't.
Click here, fill this out.
It would be more like, some branding. Hey, this is Scott, the insuranceguyonline.com. And then I would try to create value for my audience, but just keep doing that over and over and over and over, and slinging business cards and doing maybe some unique things in my community. Hell, I've never done this, but I've always wanted to go stand out in front of a Walmart in one of my office locations and just hand business cards to people as they walked in the door to Walmart.
Yeah.
Hey, my name's Scott Howell. I'm an insurance agent here in town. Man, if we can ever help you, give me a call. That's it.
I think I love the mayor aspect, like you said. That's why I started the Business Journey podcast for me, because that started off mainly interviewing businesses in my area. And then I kind of expanded it to, really whoever wants to get on the show and just have a discussion that has that entrepreneurial mindset.
Sure.
But I found that the episodes that I do in my hometown and that I post on Facebook, like you said, those have the best outcome, most engagement, most views. Yeah. So,
and I'll tell you something else. I'll tell you what I would do if I were you. I wouldn't spend a bunch of money and time on this. I might get a little ring light. I think I paid $30, $40 for that ring light.
Yeah, I got to get that, because I know where I'm shooting it now. It looks much darker than.
Yeah, you're a lot darker. Now my problem is you can see it in my glasses because I don't have the anti-glare glasses. But one thing Bradley started doing, and I take credit for this, that I came up with this idea years ago. But if I were you, I would start taking a smartphone, either an iPhone or an Android, because now they've got a camera just about as good as anything you can go out and buy.
Yeah, it's true.
And take maybe a ring light. And I would start interviewing local business owners and create what's the town or city that you live in?
I live in Bayshore, New York, and that's what my podcast is. It's the Business Journey Podcast, interviewing local business owners.
Yeah. I mean, just doing that every week. I'm kind of a Nazi when it comes to doing it at the exact same time, on the exact same day every week.
That's what I got to get better at.
Yeah, Bradley and Johnny hate me sometimes because the podcast will come out late, and I'm all over them about, guys. You know, there's nothing more habit forming in the world besides crystal meth and heroin than a podcast. And people, if you're gonna post it at 8, and we just changed the time when we post ours. We'd been doing it for 2 years at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we changed it to 10 a.m. Mm-hmm. But whatever time that is, you better same time, same channel, same place every week, and do that for about 3 or 4 years, and you'll really gain some traction. It's not something that happens overnight, but it's
no, I hear you. Yeah, consistency is definitely the key. I have to get much better at that. That's one of my weaknesses. 1 week I'll post 3 episodes. 1 week I'll post one I won't post any. It's like, I definitely need to.
Well, and listen, sure. I'm right there with you. I mean, the podcast for me is easy because we have our own production team.
Yeah.
So once I go down, once the talent goes down to Mobile and I record those podcasts, that's in their hands to get it out.
Oh, okay.
But where I fall short is social media. I mean, I have been, I guess, for the last 4 or 5 months with this transition going on and everything I've been having to deal with that, I've just got to where I hardly post anything on social media. I mean, probably maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and it needs to be 10 times a day. Not creating value, not posting what I would consider great content. Man, that's just something that I've really fallen off on. And Bradley does as good a job as anybody. In fact, I think he just hired, and I don't know if he wants me telling this or not, but I think he just hired the guy that has been, I know him because he records some of our podcasts, but I think he hired him full time like last week.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he told us that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I know you see some of the agencies like Jag. Jag is another one. They have like three guys that do their social media. It's insane.
I know. I went down. So I don't mean to interrupt, but I went down to had Jag on the podcast year and a half ago, and had 2 of the principals on the podcast. They did a great job, but through that, I told them, I said, hey, I'm coming down. I want to come down and visit you guys in Miami and just check out your operation there. And I think they thought I was bullshitting. And so, lo and behold, 2 months later, I'm on a plane and we're headed to Miami, Florida, and show up at their office. Of course, they knew I was coming. But how
did the wife like that one?
She was fine with that. It was only like a 2-day thing during the week, and one of my business partners, one of my agents here, he went with me and met those guys, met their marketing team, and we actually recorded some stuff while I was down there. But they're a juggernaut. The fact I would put them up against anybody in the insurance business in terms of content, what they put out. Yeah. They've got a group of people that are helping them with that, so they're not, I call Gaz I call him top 5. Told him he was one of the top 5 people I've ever met in my life, so I nicknamed him top 5.
Crazy.
But some of that content that he puts out is absolute gold.
It is. It's super. I have them scheduled on the podcast for hopefully they're going to be on next. They're shooting this Friday, but it'll probably air next week.
Are you going to interview all 3 or just one of them?
No, just Gaz.
Okay.
Just Gaz. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people in the world, and I think a lot of him. And without getting emotional, he's helped me out a lot more than he probably knows he has.
Yeah.
And I value his friendship very much.
Yeah, it's so motivational to see what they're doing. When I see them posting every day, I'm like, damn it, I gotta
go post something. Yeah.
I know, but their stuff is blows my mind. But anyway, back to you. I wanted to ask you before I completely forget. This is how I wanted to start the show. But sure. How did you get into the insurance world?
Yeah, that's a 6-beer story.
And I ask mainly because, you know, I started in the military first and I transferred into the insurance world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, listen, I was National Guard. I wasn't Marines like
Mm-hmm.
you, but you know, when I tell clients a little bit about my background and I say, you know, I was in the military and then I went to insurance, they're like, what?
Yeah.
What? Like what? Those two don't even go together.
Right.
So that's why I was extra excited to ask you this question, because I wanted to hear your story.
Well, I came out of college and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Even as a college senior, I've always been jealous of people who my sister is 7 years younger than I am. And since she was 13 years old, she's always wanted to be an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
She's a damn good attorney. And she works in the largest law firm in the state of Alabama. She's a partner there. And but I've always been jealous of people who always knew what they wanted to do. And I was one of those kids coming out of high school and even in college that never met a stranger, that knew everybody in school, that was friends with everybody in school, hardly ever had a beef with anybody or a problem with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout my life, starting in high school, there were times it was almost like dots on a piece of paper that you could follow, where people almost just, oh, by the way, would say, hey man, you ought to get into insurance. You've never met a stranger. People love you. They enjoy being around. You've got that whatever that it is, you've kind of got it.
Yeah.
And to me, I think romantically, insurance just wasn't something that I wanted to get into. And it's so funny because on the Insurance Guys podcast, when I talk to our guests, that some of whom have taken over their family agency, I kind of hear that same drumbeat every time. It's like, yeah, my dad was an insurance agent and I told myself I was never going to be in insurance. And even most people that have been in it, that got in it, that weren't in the family business kind of situation, always say, yeah, I did this or I did that. And then, I kind of fell into insurance somehow.
Yeah.
But I got out of college. I did go in the Marine Corps for 4 years. And that was a best of times, worst of times kind of situation. But got out of that and went to work in a sales position for a little publishing company in Tuscaloosa. It was the best training I've ever gotten. Worked in that role for about 2 years. And then somehow I kind of backed into a construction job where I wasn't, hammer and nail tool belt on, but I was more of what I call a division manager of a construction and development company out of Birmingham. And I did that for about 4 years, and I hated every minute of it. I mean, I knew that was not what I was put on this earth to do. I didn't like dealing with subcontractors. I didn't like, I just didn't like it. There was no part of that I liked. And I tried to, I guess, Jedi mind screw myself into believing I did, but pretty much wasted 4 years of my life there. Mm-hmm. And still I had people occasionally that would, say something about being in insurance or getting an insurance business. And so in 2000s, I guess it was 2008, because the company I was with, we were so heavily leveraged in college towns like Oxford, Alabama, and Tuscaloosa, and Auburn, and some of these places. We were so heavily leveraged in the home building construction business, where we had actual developments that we were doing, and then the bottom just completely fell out of the whole thing. And because I was on some of the notes at the bank relative to some of the projects we were working on, I ended up having to file for bankruptcy in 2008. And I've told this story, I think, on another podcast at some point. But it was at that time that, having to do that is very, very difficult. It's very hard. And I wasn't the Lone Ranger. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people back then that were in the construction industry that had to do the same thing. There were, you hear stories from people like Grant Cardone, where he was like, I think literally days or weeks away from having to file for bankruptcy. But
yeah,
from that, I kind of looked at myself and I thought, whatever I choose to do at this point in time moving forward, it needs to be a long-term career deal, and I need to choose something that I'm going to enjoy doing, and something that has some residual income attached to it.
Yep.
It's a little bit impervious to the ups and downs of the market. And so I went to work for a TICA, which is code for scratch, TICA New Market Insurance Agent with State Farm, who I think he had his insurance license for 3 months.
Wow.
And that first year I made $16,000, but it was so strange because even then when I started with him, State Farm doesn't sell a ton of commercial insurance. That's not really their thing.
Yep.
But even back then I was selling probably more commercial or as much commercial insurance as I was personal lines. And I could tell I was leaning more towards commercial than personal lines. But yeah, that's how I got started. And then the craziest story that I think I've ever told is they allowed me to go after about a year and a half of being with him. They allowed me to go into the agency owner pool with State Farm. Well, in order to do that, you have to create a business plan, and then you have to present that business plan to a group in a boardroom, a group of State Farm agents, and then they give thumbs up, thumbs down on you.
Wow.
So I'd been job dating with Nationwide at that time already, but the day comes where it's my turn to give my business plan to make the decision on whether Scott's going to be an agency owner or not. And I went in that morning, I think it was around 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had the suit and tie on and the whole thing, and I gave my business plan, and they told me, congratulations, you're now State Farm agency owner candidate. Not an owner yet, but a candidate. And so I walk out of that meeting, got in my truck or car or whatever I was driving back then, and was driving down the road, and the sales manager called me with Nationwide, and she said, hey, I want to go ahead and make you a formal offer. And I accepted that offer literally probably 20 minutes after I'd just been accepted into the agency owner pool with State Farm.
Wow.
And so
that pool, you just opened a scratch agency from there, basically?
Well, no, with the Nationwide opportunity, it was a scratch agency opportunity. But the one thing I tell people, because I don't ever want there to be any misunderstanding, to me, a scratch agent is, and you may be one, where you open your doors and you have zero premium.
That's me.
That was me. That's what I had. I had zero premium moving into an area here in Huntsville, Alabama. This was in 2010, where I knew nobody. I didn't know a soul. And but the one thing I had that I think kind of eliminates me from puffing my chest out and talking about what a, scratch agent and, walked up and down both uphill and downhill in the snow both ways is I had a salary. And that salary was about, I want to say $50,000 a year. Plus you made, for every policy you sold at that time, you made $75 per policy. So
that helped keep you afloat the first couple of years.
It wasn't, that's why I've never, when I tell people I started out as a scratch agent, that's true. I did. But I also had the backing of Nationwide behind me, and I had a check coming in every single month. So that makes me a lot different than a guy that just hangs it out there and says, got zero premium, I'm gonna open up an agency, see how this thing goes.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a difference, definitely.
Yeah. How when you first opened, like, how did you? Because I know prospecting is so different from back then to nowadays, although it could be the same in some cases. What were you doing back then to get business?
Big reason why my first wife and I got divorced. You know, if I can be honest.
Yeah.
You know, I spent 5 years from 2010 to 2015. I probably worked 60 hours a week. You know, I worked on every weekend, every Saturday, never took Saturday off. I hired my first employee. She was going to school at a community college about 2 miles from my office in Athens, and she'd drive by at night because she would take night classes because she was an adult. And she would drive by my office, and I remember a couple times she'd call me and she'd go, and she's one of my personal lines managers now. She's still with me. But she'd call me and she'd go, what are you still doing at the office? And it'd be like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah. But that,
there's no secret recipe. It's, you know, if you're going to make it as a scratch agent, you've got a few more bullets in your gun if you're an independent.
Yeah.
But
gotta work your ass off.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to get out there and meet people. And I was at every event and met lots of people. And, you know, at the time, when all that started, I took over a book of business after about 3 years with Nationwide. I took over a book of business. The lady that had it had gotten fired.
Oh, wow.
So I took over her agency. I had to buy that book of business from Nationwide. And actually, at the time, I didn't understand the program, but I wasn't buying the book. I was buying the servicing rights to the book.
The servicing rights, yep.
So July 1st is when I have to buy it again, but I'm buying the book, right? So
yeah. The previous agency owner had to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. So that was a weird story that one of my business partners loves to tell because he at that time, one of my agents here was in the same program I was in. He just didn't have an opportunity when he finished the program.
Yep.
There wasn't an agency open for him to buy the servicing rights.
Yep.
So he loves to tell the story. So the lady gets fired and they're talking about giving me the book, and my sales managers met with me, and so she calls me one day, and about the same time she calls me, there's a police officer walking in my door, and apparently the lady that had been let go had threatened to kill me and the sales manager, shoot us both.
Oh my God!
And so Clint, my business, I wish he was here. I'd love for him to tell this. He loves telling this story. Clint had been in Ohio, in a place called North Point, which is where Nationwide's training academy is. And he had been up there for 2 weeks doing what they call principal agency workshop. That back then was mandatory. You had to go up there for 2 weeks. You could not leave. And side note, I got another story about that as well. But he comes back home to Huntsville, walks in the lobby, walks by my office, and he sticks his head back in the door and he goes, "Why is there a cop sitting in our lobby?" And I said, "Well, lady's threatened to kill me. Nationwide paying for a cop out there in the lobby for 3 weeks to sit out there during business hours."
Oh my God. Doesn't sound like a story that should be tied to the insurance industry.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But let me tell you this. This is crazy. So I have this propensity to catch pneumonia for some reason. My body, since I was a little kid, I've been hospitalized like 5 times with pneumonia.
Jeez.
I go up to principal agent workshop. Again, back in that day, 10, 15 years ago, if you became a Nationwide principal agent, you had to go to PAW training, kind of like State Farm, where you have to go to Atlanta and go to their training for, I think theirs is even longer. But they get to come home on the weekends, I think. But so I get up to Paul, principal agent workshop, 2 weeks, can't leave. You do the training on the weekends too. They do give you a little bit of time off, but like half a day off, you know. So about the second day we're there, I start coughing, and I could not stop coughing. Now this is a class of like 50 people, and
good thing that's not nowadays. You'd be getting a side eye.
I'm just like, like every 5 or 10 seconds, I'd start coughing, and And I knew it had to be driving these people crazy because I couldn't stop. So finally, I think that started on like a Wednesday, Tuesday, something like that. By about Thursday, I came up to one of the instructors. I said, "Hey, look, I'm sick. I don't know what's wrong. I need to go to the doctor. Is there a doc in the box around here somewhere?" So he let me go for a couple of hours, and I went to a doc in the box. And they did a chest x-ray, and I'll be damned if I didn't have walking pneumonia. So I couldn't leave because if you leave, you have to start Paul class all over again. So I stayed there for the following week. Instead of accepting an airplane ticket to go up there, which I was a dum-dum for not doing that, I thought I would just drive up there in my truck to Ohio from Alabama, which is like 10 hours, 9 hours, something like that. So I drive home with walking pneumonia, get home, go to the doctor the next day, and they immediately put me in the hospital. And I was in the hospital for a week after I got home from Paul. And oh, by the way, so I'd been gone 2 weeks, then a hospital another week. So that's 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
And I had policies that had to be written that month, but it wasn't many. It was like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But there's still a quota that if you don't meet it, you get this letter that says, you know, you've not met your quota. If this happens again, you're going to go get a job doing something else, you know? So, man, it's been crazy. It's been a crazy ride.
It sounds it.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds, whatever happened with that gun story, the lady I'm assuming never showed up, right?
No.
Never heard from her again?
No, well, that's another story.
Yeah, well, that's another story.
Yeah, no, not really.
But tell me what size, I mean, so you started Scratch, and then you said Clint, I guess
Clinton Orr is his name.
Okay, so at some point you guys formed a partnership. At that point, like what size were you guys?
Yeah,
you had 1 office, 2 office.
Yeah, when he finished his program, which was about a year after I finished mine.
Oh, okay.
He didn't have an agency to go to. He did have some opportunities with other agencies, but he and I developed a very close friendship. And
okay,
today I would say we're best friends.
Nice. How many agencies do you have?
I have 3 locations.
Very nice.
This agency I'm sitting in right now is the Huntsville location. And then we have an agency in Athens, which is where I started because the lady that I was talking about, her book was in Athens, Alabama. That's about 35 miles due west of where I'm sitting right now.
Gotcha.
And then Clint lives in Florence, Alabama. So we have him a very small satellite office in Florence that he works out of. And really, that's more for him to just have somewhere to go instead of just trying to work from home in his underwear.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of our setup. We run all of our personal lines out of Athens, where we have been, but starting July 1, we have an agent here in Huntsville that's going to start selling for us July 1st. He's basically just sitting on go right now. He's helping me with some of this technology stuff that we're doing. And
yeah,
he has been a blessing in my life. I hired him on the same day, and I'd known him for 10 years. He and I had known each other for 10 years. But I hired him on the same day that President Trump came out with a news conference about COVID, and we're going to have to shut everything down. And, this is bad, and we're all going to die, and stick some Clorox wipes up your ass, and so that day I made him a formal offer and said, come on, because I need you. And probably been one of the best decisions I've ever made. He's been here since March, I think March 1st, February 28th, whatever that date was when all that happened. Yeah. But he is solid, man. He is one of those situations. It was kind of a fluke situation that happened that allowed him to come over here with me.
Yep.
But as soon as he called me, I was like, well, I got to figure out a way to make this work because I know what kind of beast he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. What do you, your office specifically? I know you said you lean more towards the commercial side of things. Do you have like a niche market on the commercial side that you really like to target?
Yeah, we do. We're real heavy into habitational.
Okay. So apartment buildings, commercial buildings, things like that.
We've had for 2 or 3 years, we had the nationwide sales team, managers, VPs coming to us like, you got to diversify. You got to diversify. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute. We don't have to do shit. Especially with us going independent July 1st. I mean, y'all don't want it. We'll take it somewhere else. But why would we want to stop doing what we're good at? Why do we want to stop doing our growth, our trajectory has just been straight through the roof.
You think it's a market share thing?
I do. I think it's a little bit of that. I think they were worried, just like, basically worried about what has happened in the last 6 months, which is Nationwide is tightened up, hardened up their underwriting for apartments and single family investors and just habitational in general. They've really hardened up since March. And but the funny thing about that is the industry as a whole, the habitational sector or niche, if you will, has hardened up across the board. So they're not the Lone Ranger. Everybody's hardened up. Everybody's taking rate. That market's just gotten really hard. And the good news is we've got choices now. We've got multiple brokerages. We've got multiple standard carriers to take risk to now. So we've been moving a lot of nationwide business the past 2 months. Yeah. We probably moved over $500,000, maybe even $1 million worth of business away from Nationwide.
Wow. Yeah. That's something I learned probably my first year of doing commercial. I remember speaking to a few different people that told me like, hey, Sean, like have your 1 or 2 niche markets, but I don't want to say diversified, but don't write only contractors, because at that time specifically, it's funny you brought up habitational. There was a big agent for Nationwide in New York, and he wrote a ton of habitational in the city. And one year Nationwide just non-renewed the whole book of habitational.
Yep.
So that was a good lesson for me early on. Like, oh shit, I don't want to do all contractors because one day Nationwide might say we're getting off the book.
That's right.
So I've always had like my main 3 that I kind of go after. But funny enough, a few years ago, Nationwide in New York dropped the contractors. They non-renewed a ton of them. Anybody going in the city. So it made it tough. They weren't writing any new contractors. And at that point I was glad, I had a little mix of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Our next hire is going to be somebody that, and I've even, I've got a guy that I've been talking to out of, over in the Atlanta area, but our next hire is going to be somebody to write small to mid-size commercial business with us. That's more general in nature, where we can write a contractor here, or we can write a whatever over there. That's one area that I think we need some help with, especially on renewals of stuff outside of habitational, and we also need help with renewals of habitational, just going over property schedules and things. But the other area that I'm deeply interested in, and I'm in negotiations right now to partner with another agency about this, is I want to be in the one of the first agencies in the Southeast to get into the cannabis business.
That's an interesting one.
Now, the problem with that right now is that it hasn't gotten down here exactly just yet, although it's coming, and we all know it's coming. And the reason we know it's coming is because of the inflow of tax revenue. I mean, if you're a lawmaker, if you're in a state House of Representatives or a governor of a state, and you look at the numbers of places like Colorado and what they've been able to generate, I don't know that you have a choice.
Yeah, I agree. What draws you to that space is I haven't even seen a policy related to the cannabis industry. Yeah. So I don't know do you know what any of those like premiums look like?
Healthy, very healthy. There is, well, honestly, I haven't deep dived into it enough to know exactly what the premiums are, but I do know that the premium levels can be extremely healthy, especially in places like, if you look at a place like Los Angeles, where let's say somebody has, 10, 12, 15 of these recreational retail outlets.
Yep.
But then they deliver.
So they have vehicles too.
So you've got that component of it as well.
Yeah.
And those premiums, they're going to be pretty damn healthy premiums.
Commercial auto always helps.
Absolutely. And there's some other things. I mean, it's just an area that I see the future of that as being something that we want to be on the cutting edge in the front of. And the reason is nobody else is even looking at it right now because it's not here. It's not here yet. Florida just introduced medical only, but they've got a lot of restrictions on that. But we all know that's how it starts, right? It starts with, we're only going to do medical, and you got to.
And they jump right in it.
And then a year later they kind of expand that, and then you kind of know how it goes. So.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Listen, I can't believe we almost did an hour already. It's so funny with the other podcast I have. We're not talking about insurance. So I feel like sometimes I'm like, all right, I've only owned a business for a certain amount of months. What do I know? You know what I mean? But like when I get on a conversation with somebody about insurance, I feel like I could go for hours, almost like a Joe Rogan podcast. So
I could sit here. Yeah, I could definitely sit here for 2 hours.
Tell
me what questions. Do you have anything you want to ask me while you're,
I had some stuff written down, but honestly, like without even looking at it, I mean, we basically went over most of the stuff, but I wanted to ask you, how is because speaking to Gaz a little bit about like all the content they're doing, and it's something I related to, and it's funny that I can relate to it because I don't find that I'm doing a ton of content, right? Mm-hmm. But I've noticed the content has helped me within the industry more than referrals or writing business for other people. It's, the marketer from X company comes in and like, oh my God, Sean, I saw your post on LinkedIn. That was awesome. Keep it up, blah, blah, blah. And it just like, it gives you like that good rapport already. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you like because you guys do a lot with the Insurance Guys podcast. I think you've done some public speaking too, right? So like how has that helped your agency evolve?
Well, that was an unintended consequence, right? I mean, I went down to interview Bradley I was doing this I'd been doing this Facebook live feed for about a year called Ask the Insurance Guy Online. And it kind of turned into a Facebook live feed of me just interviewing local celebrities.
Oh, is that how it started?
Yeah, here in Huntsville. And I'd met Bradley, found him online, or we both have different stories of how this happened. But I was going down to the beach for vacation, and he was in Mobile. And I said, hey, man, I got this thing I do on Facebook, and love to come by and interview you and talk to you. And so when we started the podcast, the Insurance Guys podcast, there were no expectations of what was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. And I think since that time, which has been about 2 years ago, the unintended consequences have been extraordinary. And one of those has been that, just like you said, not necessarily from the referral or the end consumer seeing that podcast or listening to it, but more of the inside the industry, being able to meet amazing people like Chris Paradiso and Mike Stromso and Ryan Hanley and agents like yourself, people that I would have never had the opportunity to meet or talk to or get to know. Mm-hmm. And then above and beyond that, the vendor relationships. And it's so crazy to me that people will call or email me and we've never talked before, and they'll say, I'm with such and such agency, or I'm this vendor with this company, or I'm even a carrier. Some of them will be marketing reps. Mm-hmm. And man, I'm kind of starstruck right now, Scott. I mean, I listen to your podcast every week, and I'm like, well, you don't need to be starstruck, but I appreciate it, I think that gives probably Bradley and I a little bit of leverage, if you will, because people that listen to the podcast or they've heard of us through that, I think that puts us on a little bit of a, I don't want to say pedestal, but just a little leg up when we talk to certain people, makes things easier when we need something, because we know who to call. We can say, oh, well, so-and-so knows all about that, and he's a buddy of ours. And that spider web of people that just, the Andy Priestmans and just Nick Berry with Rocket Referrals, you got all these resources at your fingertips. That, to me, has probably been the number one biggest benefit of the podcast. I don't know where I would be today relative to all the decision-making I've had to make over the past 6 months. Had it not been for the contacts and the people that I've met and gotten to lean on when hard decisions have to be made, and I can pick up the phone and go, hey, man, this stuff's going to cost me $400 a month. What do you think? Is it worth it? Is it not worth it?
Yeah, it's the resources, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably been by far the biggest benefit, because we don't make very much money off the podcast. I'm sure, you see Joe Rogan signing with Spotify for $100 million.
Ridiculous.
I mean, we make barely gas money to get to Mobile, and also I kind of like that too, because if you get into a situation where you get in bed with a vendor or carrier, and they're paying you buku money, then you start becoming beholden to them rather than the real reason we're doing the podcast, which is the agents that are listening. So
100%. No. And I agree with that completely. It's, something, as my agency grows, I'm definitely going to just more and more of it, hopefully. And hopefully one day I can get to the point where I have somebody full-time helping me with that stuff. You know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. If Travelers wants to pay me $1 million to do the Travelers Insurance Guys podcast,
there'll be a sponsor.
I'll gladly take it.
Yep.
I'll figure it out. But, until, that's comical. I mean, that's not even in the realm of possibility. I don't get. I'll tell you one thing that does piss me off, though. One thing that does piss me off is as many agents that listen to our podcast, which we normally get somewhere between 12 and 20,000 downloads a week, excuse me. And that doesn't include all the people that just go to the Insurance Guys podcast website and listen to it. That's what I do. I don't ever download it. And then you see all these InsurTech companies out there, some of which Bradley and I use their products, and you read these news articles that, they just got bought for $150 billion, or these incredible numbers. And you're like, you can't sponsor the damn podcast? Have you freaking lost your damn mind? You just got bought for $280 million.
It's insane. All the acquisitions going on.
You can't pay me $5,000 a month? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So somebody
and their market is independent insurance agents. It's like, damn, dude.
It seems like a no-brainer.
That does kind of wear on me sometimes when I think about that.
Yeah. Well, listen, we already did an hour. Let me ask you one more thing, and then I'll let you run.
No problem.
It's funny listening to, I don't know how many times I'm bringing up Jag in this podcast, but for me specifically, going from having some concepts from the military that translate well into the insurance world, like attention to detail and just hard work in general. That's kind of what turned me on to the industry, is that hey, the harder I work, the more I'm going to benefit. And that's one of the main things that drew me to it. And I've always been a hard worker, and it bothered me that I can work much harder and not get rewarded for it. Not specific to the military, just other jobs I've worked, like construction or, at a restaurant or whatever the case is. But what do you think as far as going from the military, or I read that you played basketball at a pretty high level as well. What do you think translates from that going into insurance? Because I know the guys at Jag too, they were former athletes that went into insurance, and I could see that competition. I never even played sports at a high level, and I still have that competition in me though, that fire. If I do lose an account, even if it's because of price, And I tell the person, like, that's great. Go that route. Like, I completely get it. I'm also too, and inside I'm like, damn, I lost one. I gotta, I'll make up for it later on. But, I still have that bug. You know what I mean?
So I'll answer that question this way. I look at building the perfect insurance agent. When I think about what is the perfect insurance agent? Well, there's 25 different personality types, right? But Chris Voss in his book Never Split the Difference talks about how they've boiled that down to about 4 personality types. We're all going to sell to the personality type that most matches our personality type the most.
Yep, I agree with that.
And if you can figure out the way to get to these other 3 and be able to sell to them, you're in a lot better position, because you're always going to be able to sell to this one because they act just like you do. But if you can ever figure out mentally through their tonality, through very quickly being able to tell by their tone and how they dress, if you're in front of them, which one of those other 3 personality types they are, and then switch gears and kind of be able to, you're going to sell a lot more insurance. But when I think of the perfect insurance agent, and I've given this a lot of thought, and I want to draw a straight line across to your question about athletics, maybe even the military. I think the things that would help make the perfect insurance agent relative to athletics is working most of the time, baseball, football, basketball anyway, hockey, being in a team environment, understanding, that when the coach chews your ass, it's because he wants you to be better. Being put in pressure situations. State tournament in Tuscaloosa, 1989, Scott Howell on the free throw line, Final Four, 0 seconds on the clock. He's got 2 free throws. He hits the first one. We go to the next round. So what does that do for Scott? Well, that does a lot of things for Scott. That gives him a lot of confidence in life moving forward, that if I can do that in front of 10,000 people in Coleman Coliseum with me being the only one standing at the free throw line, that gives him a lot of confidence. I think when you're a part of a sports team like Gaz and Fernie and those guys they're playing at a super high level in baseball. I think there's a tendency there to have a lot of confidence in yourself. I mean, Gaz was a pitcher. You walk out on that pitcher's mound, that's your game. That's your ball.
All eyes on you.
All eyes on you, baby. Yeah. There's the ability to handle pressure. You've got to get along with your teammates in the dugout. When you're in the military, you've got to be able to get along with people. And one thing the military does for a lot of people is once you join, you're surrounded in a platoon with people from all over the country. South LA, Texas, New York, Wisconsin, Florida, Alabama. It almost makes you, be able to deal with and get along with different types of people.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think the perfect, when I think of the perfect insurance agent, and I don't know that person exists, the one common denominator among people that I've seen just crush it in the industry, most of them were very outgoing. Most of them, you got confidence here that can, if you're not careful, can spill over into cocky.
Yep.
That's a fine wire you're walking there between confident and cocky. But most of them have a lot of confidence in themselves. And I think that the one thing an individual can do, regardless of what you're selling, doesn't matter what you're selling, is if you have a lack of confidence, or if your self-esteem is taking a hit, and I've seen this happen here in my own agency with guys I sell insurance with here, is you got to immerse yourself in the products And once you get to know something so well backwards and forwards, or you become an expert, if you will, in that particular topic, that helps your self-confidence a lot. When you start out in insurance, you don't know shit from shampoo, and you're like, when I call somebody on this phone and I sound like, I don't really, Mr. Smith, my name's Scott Howell. I'm with iProtect. I'm done right there. Game's over. Yeah. All game's over.
True. That's true.
But when you take a guy like Yaz and Doug and Fernie and, the energy Fernie's got, when they pick up the phone, they're not doing that shit. They pick up the phone. It's like, hey, this is Fernie. You need to buy some damn insurance. And people listen. People listen when I pick up the phone and call them because I have a lot of confidence.
And people can sense right away if you're full of shit or if you know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Smell it just like a dog. A lot of it's personality, but I think a lot of the stuff I just mentioned kind of rolls out of playing sports and some degree in military as well.
Yeah.
I think just being part of a team, having confidence in yourself, which may have been gained by playing sports.
Yeah. And did you have that confidence? Because I know for me, specific to insurance anyway, the first couple of years, I definitely didn't have that confidence. It took me till probably I would say somewhere around year 5. I really just got in like my groove. If somebody asked me a question, I could shoot the answer out right away. What was it like for you? Did you have the confidence off the bat?
It also takes the humility, but the ability to have enough confidence in yourself to go, you know what? I don't know that, but I'll find out and get back with you.
Well, that's
You'd be shocked at how many people can't do that.
Yeah, I know.
And then you give some bullshit answer that's wrong, and they figure out it's wrong. And then now you're done because the trust is over, and it's hard you can't ever recover from that.
Yeah, kiss that relationship goodbye.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to playing sports and playing and being outgoing, and I think people who are introverts by nature, who don't like people generally, probably are going to have a hard time in the insurance business. Not saying they can't make it. Might be a place for them besides selling insurance somewhere else.
Yep.
I see a lot of underwriters who, to me, on the phone sound like they're introverted, like they don't really like people that well. Yeah. They prefer to be at home with their cats. It takes all types to run an insurance carrier and insurance agency. Yeah. The worst thing I could do is hire 7 Scott Howells, 10 Scott Howells. I need different personality types to do different things for us here.
Yeah. So, no, I get that. Well, listen, man, we did some time already. I want you to stay on after this, but I wanted to leave off. If somebody wants to reach out to you, they have a question for Scott, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, the best way is to just send me an email at iProtect, ins@gmail.com. And I will go ahead and say it. And I need to put this on the podcast too. I try to get back with everybody. I don't know many people I have not gotten back with, but it may be a while. It may be 2 weeks before I respond to your email because I get so many emails from podcast listeners, and I have to kind of tamp down how much time I spend on the getting back to people stuff. So, but I will do my dead level best to get back with you.
That's awesome. Well, listen, man, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.